to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's assumed that at the end, while Paul is still basically on house arrest, he has some freedom there in Rome, but he wrote the book to the Ephesians, to the Philippians, the Colossians, and Philemon. So in verses 11 through 16, we see Paul received a pleasurable reception. Point number 2, Rome becomes a platform to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Verse 17 says, after 3 days, Paul called together those who were the leading men of the Jews, and when they came together, he began saying to them. Now, if you remember, the Spirit of God had let Paul know that he would be speaking in front of all of these people, all of these rulers, and Rome was his final destination. God got him where he wanted him to be. He's speaking to all the dignitaries and the Jews. Paul has a heart for the Jews. You'll see this here in a moment. It says, when they came together, he began saying to them, brethren, I had done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers. Paul was a Jew. Paul loved the Jews. In fact, if you flip forward again to Romans chapter 9, you'll see Paul's heart for the Jews. He says, I am telling the truth in Christ, Romans chapter 9, verse 1. I am telling the truth in Christ. I am not lying. My conscience testifies with me in the Holy Spirit that I have great sorrow and unceasing grief in my heart. For I could wish that I myself were accursed, separated from Christ for the sake of my brethren, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. Paul loved his people. He loved his people enough because he understood that if they died without Christ, they would be eternally separated. If you love your people, whoever your people are, young folk would say, oh, those are my peeps. If you love your peeps, then you need to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with them. I received a call on yesterday. One of my peeps, one of my childhood peeps, he called me and he said, hey, we had a little small talk, and he said, you know what? He says, the Lord really has kept me, and for whatever reason, he was thinking about death, and he says, just know that if something happens to me, you got to preach my funeral. And I love that brother. And God has made a wonderful change in his life. And he's made a wonderful change in my life. When we were singing the song, A Wonderful Change, I was just thinking about the change that he has made in my life. Listen, if y'all knew what I used to be, y'all would not be sitting here listening to me. Now, I know Miss Williams and Sister Dabney, I know y'all thought I was a real nice kid, but I'm telling you, I was corrupt. I was an angry young man. I was angry enough. If you made me mad, I could choke the life out of you. You don't believe that, Sister Donna? Well, try me. No, I'm just... She said, I do believe it. Listen, I thank God for what he has done in me. But guess what? Listen, don't clap, because he is not done with me yet. And he's not done with you yet. He is constantly changing us and transforming us into the image of his son. And sometimes he allows storms to happen in your life to allow you to see what you used to be. He allows storms to come so that you might cling to the cross, that you might come to the end of yourself where you become totally dependent on him. And so I thank God for the wonderful change that's happened in my life. Paul loves his people, and if you love your people, share the gospel of Jesus Christ with them. You're not too young, young people, to share the love of Jesus Christ with your friends and your classmates. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to stand before the judgment and give an account for what we've done. He says, listen. He says, I wish that I myself were accursed, separated from Christ for the sake of my brother and my kinsmen according to the flesh, who are Israelites, to whom belongs the adoption as sons and the glory of the covenants and the giving of the law and the temple service and the promises, who are the fathers, and from whom is the Christ according to the flesh, who is over all, God bless forever. Amen. Paul at the end here is appealing to the Jews, his peeps. Back in Acts chapter 28, he says, here in verse 17, after 3 days, Paul called together those who were the leading men of the Jews. And when they came together, he began saying to them, brethren, though I had done nothing against our people or the customs of our fathers, yet I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans. Paul is very strategic in his approach. Point 2, Rome becomes the platform to share the good news of Jesus Christ. He is very calculated in his words to appeal to the Jews, to let them know that, one, he is a Jew, and number 2, he loves the Jews, and all the customs of the Jews, he is not downplaying those. He says, I was delivered as a prisoner from Jerusalem into the hands of the Romans, and when they had examined me, they were willing to release me because there was no ground for putting me to death. Paul is appealing to, on his own behalf, he says, listen, I've done nothing to offend the Jews other than preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. And when they had examined me, they were willing to release me because there was no ground for putting me to death. Verse 19. But when the Jews objected, I was forced to appear to Caesar. Not that I had any accusation against my nation. For this reason, therefore, I requested to see you and speak with you, for I am wearing this chain for the sake of the hope of Israel. Paul is standing before Caesar, Nero, and he's pouring out his defense on his behalf. They had no charges, credible charges against him that could stand. So they used Paul as a political pawn, and he was passed on and on and on, and now he is standing before the Roman king, Nero. Verse 21 says, they said to him, we have neither received letters from Judea concerning you, nor had any of the brethren come here and reported or spoken anything bad about you. Now, all that Paul had done, all that he had stirred up, it is highly unlikely that they hadn't heard anything about Paul. In fact, by this time, there's already an established church in Rome. So certainly they had heard about this sect called Christians. And so they're probably just, again, trying to pass the buck, trying to appease the Jews. In verse 21 again, it says, they said to him, we have neither received letters from Judea concerning you, nor have any of the brethren come here and reported or spoken anything bad about you. But we desire to hear from you what your views are, for concerning this sect, it is known to us that it is spoken against everywhere. And so Paul comes before this Roman leader, and he has a platform to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. Notice that Paul's message is never changing. You know, one thing about the gospel is it doesn't change. Paul says in Romans chapter 1, verse 16, which is a key verse in the book of Romans, he says, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God unto salvation to those that believe, first to the Jews, and then to the Gentiles or to the Greeks." So Paul's message never changed. Whatever audience Paul had, he preached the gospel. Why? Because Paul understood that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. You know, we can preach about a whole lot. And one of the things that, you know, I'm praying about where we're going to go next in the next preaching series. But ultimately, every Sunday, we need to make sure that we are preaching the gospel. Well, what's the gospel? Well, I'm glad you asked. The gospel is Jesus Christ died on the cross according to the scriptures. He was buried and God raised him from the dead according to the scriptures. Well, you say, I already know that. Well, tell somebody that. It is that simple gospel that Paul said in Romans chapter 1, verse 16, that is the power of God unto salvation. There can be no salvation if there is no one preaching the gospel. You can preach about a whole lot. I'm all for being relevant, but guess what? We can be relevant and folk can still go to hell if they don't hear the gospel. So I'm glad you're asking, who should preach the gospel? Y'all. All y'all. All of y'all who have called upon Jesus Christ as your Lord and your Savior, you are commissioned to go into the world and preach the gospel. What's the gospel? Jesus died on the cross. He was buried. God raised him from the dead. That's all you need to know. And if you need to know anything more, you already know it, because you can tell folk about the wonderful change that has come over you. Tell them what you used to be. Tell them what you used to do. And then tell them who you are now. It is that gospel that changed your life. And it is that gospel that if we present it to others, that is able to, it is still the power of God unto salvation to those that believe. Look at verse 23, where we'll see a precise presentation. Verse 23. He says, the stage is set. They want to now hear about this message, this sect. And so now Paul is going to present them very precisely the message of the gospel. Verse 23, when they had set a day for Paul, they came to him at his lodging in large numbers. Just pause real quick. Isn't it wonderful how God is taking care of Paul? I mean, Paul was beaten, left for dead. He was shipwrecked. They're all on the ship going into Malta. Paul says, listen, if y'all try to get off the ship, y'all not going to make it. But ultimately, when Paul, they hit a coral reef and they all make it to shore, Paul gets bit by a snake. The natives are looking at him, waiting for him to die. He didn't die. God was favorable to Paul. And then they give him his own quarters. They give him a separate quarter. He has a guard that is, he's chained to a guard, but obviously it's a long chain because Paul has some freedom. And now he has a platform here in Rome in verse 23. When they had set a day for Paul, they came to him at his lodging in large numbers. He didn't have to go to them. They came to him. Isn't that awesome? He says they came to him at his lodging in large numbers. And he was explaining to them by solemnly testifying about the kingdom of God. That's God's universal reign. And it says he was trying to persuade them concerning Jesus from both the law of Moses and from the prophets. from morning to evening. Now you got to remember, Paul does not have the Bible as we have it. Paul does not have access to the New Testament. There is no New Testament at this time. Paul has only the Old Testament or the Hebrew Scriptures. And he is appealing to them through the law, which is the first 5 books, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the law. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. He's using those 5 books which comprise of the law. And he's using the prophets, the prophetic books. And he's explaining to them, he's basically giving a discourse on how Jesus, he fulfills the law and the prophets. What Paul is saying is, listen, in the law and the prophets that spoke of the coming Messiah,